A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to this week's edition of The Agenda. My name is Toiwan Jebela, your host. Tonight on the show we are privileged to have Dr. Rudie van Vuuren. He's co-owner of the Nankuse Wildlife Sanctuary, as well as John Grobler, who is an investigative environmental journalist. Gentlemen, thank you for making time. Really appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. Thank
you. Doctor, thank you very much for making time.
Pleasure.
Sure. Let's start with you, John. You know, the whole week has been, with screaming headlines about elephants being auctioned by government to individuals and so forth and so forth. And one of the things that I asked my reporters this week was to say, and Namibian Sun was to say, give us a sense of what is the fuss really about this whole thing. And you are very well versed on this subject. You made headlines yourself recently regarding that. Give us your sense of what are the issues around this issue?
Look, firstly, we have to understand that we attract foreign tourism to Namibia because people come here to see wild animals. It's like building a new museum, but selling off your best artworks in order to pay your salary for the job that you still have to do. It is tantamount to an act of economic despoliation because we are literally selling off the very assets, because these are state assets, to another country. So, we kind of, are we working for the Dubai Tourism Board here? What is going on here? The fundamental problem with all of this is that, if it is true, as they claim, that this was absolutely necessary to deal with a rampant, human-elephant conflict, the way the whole process played out just makes nonsense of that. Because first of all, they put up 170 elephants for tender, but they put out this tender only in December. You don't put out a tender in December if you want to get the best possible response. Everybody else is kind of off on holiday. So, in spite of everything, they only got 5 offers instead of possibly 50. And then we were kind of deceived about this all along. There was this massive secrecy around it, all along. They would not disclose anything. If I knew that the Omachete elephants were going to Timbila Lodge, I didn't have a problem with that. But it's because nobody knows what is really going on. They're being so secretive, and the question is why. What further emerges is that the first statement that we got out of Bamba Shifeta, which I think was in August last year, just before they went to the capturing, he said that there were 5 birds, 3 of which were successful. 57 elephants had been allocated, of which 15 would remain with a local bird, because they didn't say any names, we didn't know about that yet, and 42 would be exported to foreign destinations, and they refused to say anything about that as well. Now, trade in African savanna elephants is an internationally regulated thing, and it is therefore of cardinal international and local interest that we know what is going on here. This is not transparency, and this definitely isn't accountability. Now, if it is true that the HEC is so rampant that it compelled them to do this, the sale of especially the Kamanya herd to a Dubai zoo just does not make any sense, because most of the HEC that we know of that is happening in terms of crop damage, because they paid out millions in crop damage, all of that crop damage is all happening in the northeast, around the Kondo core area and around the Buffalo core area, which is literally hundreds of kilometers away from where this herd is. The basic rules here is that, for example, if there's a problem elephant in an area, you can't just go and shoot any elephant. You have to identify the specific elephant. So if you are removing this herd for causing crop damage, you have to remove the herd
the specific
causing the crop damage, not another herd over there. So
I hear
what
that.
is more is that they were also given an offer by African Parks Rescue to take all 170 elephants off their hands and move those to Kwango, which is literally, where they go in summer, or late winter rather. Elephants have been migrating north-south between the Kwango wetlands and the Okavango Delta for time immemorial. But their route has been, interdicted. First of all, there was the Trans-Caprivi highway that was built, and then there was this fence that was put up in 2009.
Yeah.
So it kind of really restricts their movements, and we're interfering with the movement, the natural, seasonal migration of these animals. Botswana is effectively fenced off the vast majority of the transfrontier herd, and this is not being recognized somehow.
Yeah.
They complain about having too many elephants, but they put up this fence. If you don't drop the fence and allow the animals to move back into Kwango, which is largely unpopulated land. I know Kwango. I worked there for WFP years ago. That is perfect elephant range country.
Yeah. Hold your thought, John, and thank you for that elaborate response. I think the context is now very clear. Dr. Van Vuuren, Nankuse was one of the successful bidders. You bought, I think, 15 elephants. What do you intend? What was the thinking behind purchasing those 15?
Well, we've been doing a lot of research over the last 10 years on human-elephant conflict in Kavango cattle ranch area. And, we see what human-wildlife conflict or conflict with humans does to elephants. And we've been working with ERA, who does a lot of research in the Northwest with those conflict elephants. And for us, we created this 33,000 hectare reserve, which was an old hunting reserve, into a place where we can accommodate animals like that. And we just thought, rather move them to a place where they are safe and where the people are safe, than either letting them be culled or letting them be hunted or chronic persecution. Because that influences the way they move, it influences the way they breed, it influences the way they behave. So for us, it's an expensive exercise to do that. But we saw it as a solution to make a small contribution. As I said, the work that we've done in the Kavango cattle ranch area with the commercial farmers and NIDA there, we have a different approach there. There we're looking at building elephant-friendly water troughs and that kind of thing to help mitigate the conflict. This was one of the ways that we thought we could contribute.
John, do you think that so the conflict, it looks as if that is a foregone conclusion that indeed there is conflict between humans and elephants. Is it due to the number of elephants? Are they too many? Do we need to reduce the numbers?
No. First of all, the model that this ministry relies on how they calculate the actual numbers is based on a base count of 7,500 animals in 1995, which they say grew at a steady and exponential rate of 3.5% over the past 20 years. Now, if you actually do the calculation, do the maths, you'll see that can at most mathematically calculate to 17,282 elephants. Secondly, there is no large mammal population of any kind that we know of that always and continuously grows at an exponential rate, with the exception of humans. The tendency has always been for you'll have boom years and then you'll have, it dies off, but the numbers kind of remain constant. It is worth noting that in 1995, the Kruger National Park had about the same number of elephants, 7,500. They currently still have about the same number of elephants. They tend to be self-regulatory in that respect. And that is without actually any culling or any other interventions. The animals do know how many of them can live in the area without. These are highly sentient, highly intelligent animals. So, secondly, all the human-elephant conflict that they are talking about is all happening in those two little corridors on either side of the east-west Botswana fence, around Buffalo Core area and mostly around the Quandokor area. Now, that's where they left 2 30-mile, 30-kilometer gaps in the fence,
Yeah.
but they also have elephant hunting camps at either side. Now, this is the route that the elephants follow north-south in their seasonal migration.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing now is that, first of all, that area, especially in the Kwando area, has been heavily encroached by human settlement ever closer to the road, ever closer to the areas where the elephants move. So, of course, are you going to be putting up your field in a place which is basically an elephant highway? Well, of course, you are going to have crop damage. That should have been prevented from happening in the first place. We're intelligent people with communicative abilities here. Why are we not managing the humans a little better than expecting elephants to conform to elephant behavior? The elephants have adapted to a very large extent.
Yes.
What I've seen, especially with the Omachete, is that they will only feed at night. They will go out, drink just before dawn, and then they will hide somewhere, and then will stay there until it gets dark, and then they'll start feeding and move on to the next point. So, they have adapted as much as they can to us humans. So
we must do our part also.
We have the super predator here. We should take responsibility for what we're doing.
I hear you. So in your case, doctor, then in the case of Nankuse, because the 2 bidders that have appeared in the papers this week are that in your case, yours were moved to your area. Others were sold abroad, what we hear. In your case, what is the end game for you? What would be the end game? Is it to keep them there, or do you have intentions to sell further as time goes, for example?
No, we will keep them there, but it's because it's a finite area, you have to manage that population, unfortunately. We are talking to our neighbors. We border Irindi. We are very close to Mount Etchu. We really want to create big wilderness areas. So we're talking to our neighbors to see if there's not a future for creating bigger, safe havens for these so-called conflict animals. But we have no intention to sell them. They are there. Tourists can see them, but we will have to manage the population, and we can't take more and more and more in. Otherwise you also have a massive impact on the environment. So we have a group of scientists monitoring them every day. It's interesting how their behavior has changed, how they've calmed down. You couldn't, before we captured those elephants, we did aerial surveys. I flew a couple of surveys there, and the behavior of those elephants towards aeroplanes and cars was drastically different from what it is now. They've calmed down. We've got a collar on the matriarch. We monitor her movements. We look at spatial use and that kind of thing. So we approach it from a scientific point of view. But the end game is to create larger, safe landscapes, be it private, be it government. But that's what we should do. We should build our economy around our wildlife. And to do that, we need landscape.
Sure.
What that does tell us, the fact that they've calmed down now, is that they were actually being harassed by the humans. And that's why they were aggressive towards humans until now. Now they're feeling safe, and now they don't behave aggressively anymore. So
makes sense.
It is the human aspect that needs to be managed better here.
I hear you. So one of the issues, again, Doctor, in the course of the week, as far as the headlines are concerned, are the prices at which the elephants were bought. You bought 15 for 1.125 million. Was it a bargain for you?
No, the capture cost and the actual infrastructure that you need to build is the big cost. The acquisition cost from the ministry is not the big cost. If we work it back to, if we include our capture cost and you include the soft release BOMA, in which they spend only 48 hours before they are released, and you include the fencing and that kind of thing, you're looking close to 250,000 per elephant. So how do you define a bargain? A bargain, if you say, I'm going to buy these elephants for tourism in a time where tourism is actually non-existent, and this decision was taken at the peak of COVID, We had to decide, are we going to do this or not? Our decision was based on what we do.
Yeah.
Our decision was not money driven, because we would never invest $3.5 million if we think we're going to make that money back from tourism. But that's what we do. We have partners, we have funders, we have sponsors to do these kinds of things. And as you know, it was like a chorus. We said, we have to do this. We have to make a contribution.
John, before you go for a break, and I know that you you don't even want to hear anything about any profits being made from these animals, being the John that we know. But do you think then that if the sale was inevitable, that at least it should have been at a particular price range? Then what was the case
Previous
here?
elephants sold into Dubai were selling for between 30,000 and 40,000 US dollars. You know, the average price that was paid now was $6,000 per animal. That suggests that there is a huge profit being made in the middle. And then there are huge questions about this. Initially we were told, you know, 3 bidders, 1 local, 2 foreign, and now we've been told, oh no, but somehow Go Hunt Namibia was a foreign bidder. You know? So who is the third one? And what is to happen with the last 20 animals that have not yet been captured? Where are they supposed to go? You know? And for what price? There are just too many questions here that are not being answered.
Yeah. How transparent was your process, Doctor? Maybe if you can give us that assurance to say, because you know the speculation is exactly that people feel the prices were so low that they think that, and John alluded a lot to how secretive the entire process was. But in your case, what is it that you can tell us insofar as how you went about the process?
I think I experienced the process as transparent. I worked with Kenneth Uysep at the ministry, who's a very clever guy who knows elephants and who's a very transparent guy. We didn't experience anything. We didn't know who the other bidders were, and we were also not interested, and we were not privy to that. So in terms of our process, it was transparent. If there's one thing I would have changed is we wanted to be public about it from the beginning, which the ministry said they are the ones who's they're doing the auction. They will go to the media when they think it's necessary. So we always try to be transparent, and we don't want to end up being named in the same headline as someone else who apparently takes it to China or wherever. So I found that the process quite transparent.
Indeed. We go for a quick break and then return for the second half of the show.
Choose your Flex package with Paratus today. Sign up for ultra-fast fiber with the convenience of mobile LTE. That's 2 products in 1 bundle. It's new, it's 1 bill, and you can stay connected in more than 1 location.
For more information, visit paratus.africa/NA.
Always prepared. Paratus.
We continue addressing the elephant in the room with John Grobler and Dr. Rudie van Vuuren. John, share with us, with our audience, what transpired, if you're at liberty, in the Grobler area where you went to investigate this very issue.
No problem.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'd been looking for these elephants for a while.
Yeah.
Rudie can confirm. I actually found, the ones on Nankusi in December already. But it was this other herd that I was deeply concerned about because they just disappeared, kind of thing. Yeah. So eventually, I established that they were on this farm out there, on this Gerhard farm out there in Grobler. So I drove out to go and see Gerrie Odendaal and ask him to, confirm the basics here, because I do investigative reporting. I can't just say 22 elephants without showing proof or citing a knowledgeable source about this. So, and it was actually quite a, cordial exchange. It was I sort of expected that he might want to run me off his farm at gunpoint because we're not friends. We don't see eye to eye on this hunting conservation thing. But he said he would have to ask the permission of MEFT for me to be able to see these animals. MEFT was saying, oh no, this is a condition imposed by the buyers, and that is actually not true. And it is something, as Rudie now basically confirmed just now, a condition imposed by MEFT all along. So I said, look, that's fine, but we have to impose sort of a deadline here, otherwise we're going to spin it out, and I need to get my work done as well. So I asked him for a deadline on Wednesday. So it's fine, the MEFT from Grobler was going to come and see him the next day. So it looked like it was going to be all right. But then Wednesday came, and I think sort of, I was fed all kinds of excuses. Thursday came, Friday came, and Saturday I decided, and I told Gerrie right at the beginning, if you are not going to give me access yourself, you must please understand that I'm a journalist, I'm an investigative journalist, and I will have to do what I have to do in order to get the facts that I need and to do my job. So please, whatever happens after here, you also bear responsibility for. And so I went back there on that, that Saturday, and I'd seen him using a drone.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Sorry. I'd seen them use a drone when I left the farm because they followed me with the drone off the farm.
Yeah.
So I knew there was a drone being used there.
Yeah.
So I went back and I didn't even go onto Gerrie's farm.
Yeah.
I stopped in the road corridor of the neighboring farm because the camp is quite close to the fence, about 300 meters away, but you can't see in there because they have this huge wall. So, I popped up the drone as high as I could go, just to try and see and just to count them, to confirm they are there, to confirm the numbers, and as far as possible, define or find out, if there are any bulls, cows, calves, and all of that. And but my drone pilot wasn't exactly the most experienced, and it's also very difficult to operate this. So, because you're filming with a tiny screen, and so once I found them in this little camp of theirs of 16 hectares, because it's actually quite difficult to see them, and it was relatively poor light. I brought it in, I brought the drone back, and I headed back for Grobler. But I'm a guy who covered Angola, and I covered the conflicts in South Africa in the old days, and I'm used to cops coming to me and confiscating my film, because they don't want me to get this footage out. So before I got to Grobler, I had downloaded the footage and uploaded it into the cloud, because I knew they were going to come for me. And of course, there they were. So I got arrested by the Omaheke warden for trespassing on private land, which is really odd. They say they have nothing to do with the elephants anymore. They sold it, but at the same time, they're arresting me for trespassing on somebody else's land. So, I mean, a long story short is that we were then detained and held, and I told them that they wanted the evidence. But they wanted to take the whole drone. I mean, the drone is actually not the evidence, it's just the SD card.
Yeah.
I said, oh, here's the card, you take that.
Mm.
No, they want the drone.
Yeah.
It was like, basically, punishing me for something that is not even in their legal remit. If you're going to confiscate my drone, this has to come from the NCAA, not from MEFT. So way over the lines here.
I hear
so
you.
I mean, I'm currently under criminal investigation for a misdemeanor of trespassing. It's more, if I was arrested for trespassing on a farm, but I was arrested 120 kilometers away from there. So, how do you work this out?
I hear you. Okay, no, thank you for sharing that story, John. I think, for us as an industry, obviously, we monitor these things quite closely. So, Doctor, I'm just wondering you are the expert in that space now, wildlife management and conservation management, those resources. What is the best way to, is there such thing as having an overpopulation of, I remember in Zimbabwe in 2019, they were selling their elephants because they had, the country says its capacity is 55,000 elephants. They had about 85,000 at the time. What is the best way in your view to manage that overpopulation?
Well, I think, there shouldn't be an overpopulation. That's the first thing. And in my opinion, we in Namibia, we're sitting on a time bomb in terms of conservation. The laws that govern the management of wildlife in this country, and in particular the welfare of animals in this country, dates back from 1962 and 1975. Now in 1962, we still believe that smoking is good for you. The world has changed. Our laws in this country to manage wildlife and to protect the welfare of animals have not changed. Now we claim we are leaders in conservation, and you can no more separate animal welfare from conservation. Let me be clear, I'm not talking about animal rights. I'm not an animal rights activist, but I'm an animal welfare activist. Now, if we had proper laws in place in terms of animal welfare and the management of these populations, we would not sit where we're sitting now. We would have better systems in place. We would have experts involved, and maybe we don't have an overpopulation. The overpopulation is because in human wildlife conflict, the human is the problem, not the wildlife. We can control the controllables. We shouldn't control the wildlife. We should control what we do. Sustainable development, wildlife corridors, safe, wild, big areas, like in the south of Namibia, Namabrand, what the guys of Kodwana are doing down there. That's what we should be doing. We should be building our economy around creating space and wilderness. We should not have overpopulations. When we manage those overpopulations, we need to be innovative. We need to think of Namibian solutions. Now, there are different options, and there's a recent survey that was done, and the public opinion is still that hunting is the best solution. And I'm by no means anti-hunting. I think if hunting is well controlled, well policed, it does play a role in conservation, but it comes back again about patrolling, policing, and managing that. So these overpopulations are, I think, a misperception. We should look in the mirror and see the animal that's actually causing the conflict.
Indeed.
I would like to address this overpopulation thing. In terms of the figures supplied by the MFT, there is, according to them, a herd of 13,000 elephants, in that narrow West Caprivi strip and in Zambezi. Now, as we both know, this is like the most, geographically constrained areas of the East. In terms of population density, you would be looking at an average of 600 elephants every square kilometer. Now, if you could go and show me any place there where you can find 600 elephants per square kilometer, really, they're not there. They're gone. They are actually being pushed out from the areas that they used to be in because of increasing human encroachment, as Rudie alluded to here. This is why we're seeing them now appear in areas they haven't been seen in before. Not in our memory, but they definitely have been there. For example, the Omachete elephants, if you go, move around with the radio people there, you'll find there lots of places. There's a name, elephant fountain, elephant mountain, elephant this, elephant the other things. So they were definitely there, say 100, 150 years ago. That population we see in those ephemeral rivers is, in my considered opinion, and somebody who's been watching them for a long, long time, it's one population that's been moving between the Etosha and ephemeral river system for years now. And what created the problem is, the fences that got put up in between the farms. So some of them basically got cut off from where they would like to go back to. They can't get back anymore, so they kind of settle in areas that they are, let's say, not welcome. Because, it is the human population that is constantly increasing. The human population has increased threefold since 1995. Now, if the elephants also did the same, we should see a commensurate spike in human-elephant conflicts in those areas. But you don't. It's not happening. So where is this massive human-elephant conflict area? I'd actually gone and investigated each and every place where there was alleged human-elephant conflict in Omachete. And on the whole, it was minute. They pulled over a tank here, they knocked over a water tank there. They were mostly looking for water. If you've ever been so thirsty you thought you were going to die, you'll understand what it means. So what I think we should be doing in Namibia is a much more holistic approach to conservation by creating wildlife corridors, especially in the ephemeral river systems. That whole Hoorab river system should be one large biopark. I think community-based natural resource management can work, but I think it can only work on private land, because out in the communal areas, nobody owns them, but everybody owns them, so everybody grabs whatever they can. They're not managing the resource as it should be. Hunting has worked well in the commercial areas because the farmers are careful about what and how much they shoot. Out there, they just try and make as much money as they can every time. The result that the game in Kunene is gone. There's nothing left.
Rule of the jungle. Okay. So doctor, we are told that Namibia is sitting on piles of ivory. The last figure I saw was worth 300 million or something to that effect. In your case, if something happens, a natural cause of any sort happens to your elephants, what do you do with things like the tusks and ivories? What are the protocols around that?
Well, you have a legal obligation to give that tusks to the ministry, same as with rhino horn. So if something would happen to one of our elephants, we would need to notify the ministry and then fill in all the paperwork and send the tusk to the ministry.
So you don't say it's my elephant and my tusk. In law, that's not how it works.
You see, I think that's the other thing about wildlife is that we need to put value on wildlife. Humans are funny species. They conserve what's valuable to them. That's why wild dogs, for instance, in this country is being decimated because there's no value to them. So I think, I think there is an exception. I'm not clear about that law, that you can keep the tusks, but I'm not sure if you're allowed to trade with it. I think you're not allowed to trade with it. I'm not sure. It's like a rhino horn. But for us, the value is not in trading with that tusk or anything. For us, the value is having the elephants there and having people see them. So once again, the laws needs to be updated and modernized.
Indeed.
And the other thing, I thought about it now when John was talking about, we need to look at science. We do a lot of research. We base our decisions on science. There's a lot of good people in this country doing research. Those results should govern how we decide how we manage wildlife, not emotions. We should look at science. But we need to pool that results and that science and use that as a basis for our decision making, not selectively taking scientific work from certain people, but from all people doing scientific work in this country. We are inherently we are scientists, and that should govern our decision making.
Yeah.
Just
Yes,
with the
please,
stockpile thing,
please,
yeah. Ever since Bomo Shafeta came to the ministry, he's been talking about one thing only, is how much money we could make out of the stockpile, which he thinks is worth billions. Now, he seems to be unaware of the fact that, in 1999 there was, and in 2009, there were scientist-sanctioned auctions. Now, the first auction in 1999 was an utter disaster, because the Chinese buyers all colluded to keep the prices at $100 per kilo on average. The ministry was expecting 2,500 or more per kilo. And then they basically lied to us about it, because I asked specifically, did you get the prices? I don't know, we got what you want. I afterwards found out, no, not at all. To make it worse, they did it again in 2009. And the same thing happened, except the Chinese now bid on average $153 per kilo. And they were expecting $3,500. So, and now they want to do this again. We've already sold off the best plus everything, to the Chinese buyers. And each time we had one of these auctions, it was followed by a spike in poaching, because you're keeping this market alive by constantly and continuously feeding them ivory. The buyers did not flood the market and bring the prices down. They hoarded that ivory for as long as they could and dripped it into the market and kept the prices at $1,500 in Japan and in China. So we got horribly screwed by, supposed academics. Let's be frank about this, because I put this squarely in front of the door of Manan Lindiki. He lied to us about those prices back then, and he never came clear about it. And now he's perpetuating this total misconception.
What must we do with the stockpiles that we have? Must we burn them like Malawi?
No. What I would really like to see being done with the stockpile is to take like a part of the Altefeste Museum, which is kind of really run down, and create a museum out of this. Create a permanent exhibition of the best examples as part of like a larger exhibition on some of our most precious assets in this country. It's something that will attract the tourists in their thousands. It will be on every TripAdvisor and every tourism brochure. Use it to attract tourism, not just cash in once off. Like I said right at the beginning, you can't create a massive new museum and then send off your best artworks and think people are going to come to watch the empty walls.
Indeed.
Let's put the ivory out. Let's put out like a competition. Have people come up with ideas of how this can be presented. Because it is something that I know that local and foreign tourists would love to see. Our tourism has run absolutely terribly. It's like this whole thing has done so much damage to tourism in the country. And it is my information that this decision to sell these elephants was not shared with the rest of the ministry. The Directorate Tourism was caught completely unawares by all of this, and they are the ones who are now going to face the flak for it, because it's tourism that's going to suffer.
Indeed. Doctor, any last words just to sort of bring a conclusion to this beautiful conversation?
Well, I think it's a controversial conversation. What we did, we think, made a contribution to conservation in this country. We will keep doing it. For us, the welfare of animals is of critical importance. The creation of and conservation of landscape is critical important. And the involvement of communities is critically important. I think there will always be opinions, which is great, and those opinions should be debated and argued, but in the end we should act in the interest of conservation in this country, and we should, the end goal should be that Namibia becomes and stays the leader in conservation in this country. We make mistakes along the way, but we should learn from those mistakes.
Indeed.
We should not repeat those mistakes.
Indeed. John. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Doctor, thank you very much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Yeah, this was the agenda for this week. Thank you for watching.